unimitable style.
Yes.
From Alan Walker. So take it away, Alan, and his supporting band.
Hey, chavals. Sorry for being away and not getting in contact much, but we've been quite busy here in Catalonia, having to deal with the oppression and violence from the police and their hooligans that they send over from time to time. Well, this year, 2017, well, shit, really, wasn't it? For Catalan's Dragons. No surprise, really, with the exception of one obvious team. 2017 Super League was fairly shit all round, really. Definitely the least shit, apart from Castleford, was Wakey. Everyone else was shit. We were closer to the shittier end of shit. In the end, I was really hoping for Elite 1 for next year, and in effect, really, I still am. As I said, our year in one word would be shite. Too many players didn't seem to give a shit, or either that or they were too nervous about relegation. It's hard to say. Basically, our recruitment now on needs really to be based around recruiting people in if we need them. Basically, no imports unless they're absolutely necessary. If I had my way, I wouldn't even import French, just Catalans, proper mountain men, log choppers, farmers, proper bastards, really. We've got some good players coming through. The under-23s are quite strong. The under-19s pushed Wigan in their championship. In fact, we've supplied a number of other players to Super League. In the £1 million game, Leigh had more Catalans on the park than we did. We've got a lot of good players coming through, and I'm not going to mention any of them in particular because it's karma. They'll get sold if I mention them. So I'll leave it at that. As for coaching, we've kicked out Jerry Gisette, and we've got in Stupa coach Steves, and that's not really a great swap in my opinion. I just hope we keep the mighty Bosco around. He's a true legend and irreplaceable when he's ready to take over the full team. I'm not too sure about next year, neither for the Super League or for us. I certainly can see Cass getting better. In fact, they're really an inspiration for us. If we follow their example, we could be champions in 2095. What we're missing is the passion. Watching Jamal Fakir go round for Lesingnan this year showed the passion that we miss. And we're also missing rumba. With Gigo out, the only great rumbero left is Fuad Yaha, and he's not quite the same without his partner in crime, Tony G. There are two important words in Catalan that everyone should know. One is rausha, and the other is sen. And our forwards need to be our rausha. Just bash it up, tackle hard, be a bit mental. Imagine 3 David Ferriots going at it proper hard. That's rausha. Oh, 3 Ferriots and a couple of Fakirs. That's perfection. Now you're talking. Then at the backs, they can have a think. They can work out what to do. That's sen. Then, when we've got all that lined up, we just go dancing, rumba style. That's it. Catalan Dragons dancing rumba catalana. Rumba! So, thanks to Tom and Mark for the podcast. It's great every year. I reckon Dragons for the treble next year. And I'll speak to you all next year if the tanks don't come in and kill us all first. Goodbye. You still there? Okay. Anyway, I grabbed my knives and I went up to the slaughterhouse to have a chat with Prezi Bernie G the other day. The problem was he was a bit busy. He was having a meeting with the drug inspectors. Anyway, I opened the door and I had a little listen.
Shut up, all of you! For more than 10 years, there's been peace. Everyone to his own patch. We've all had it sweet. I've done every single one of you favours in the past. I've put money in all your pockets. I've treated you lot well, even when you was out of order, right? Well, now there's been an eruption. So it's fucking Belfast on a bad night. One of my closest friends, he's lying out there in the freezer. And believe me, all of you, nobody goes home until I find out who done it and why.
Fabulous, as always, to hear from you, Alan, once you got away from the politics and into the rugby. There was a bit of a theme developing, really, wasn't there, in terms of how shit he thought the year had gone.
You said the word shy, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Well, to be fair, it was pretty mad for much of the year for Catalan Dragons as well. Alcama Tios also got in touch and gave us a one-sentence or two-sentence review. He said, this year was no good. Next time we win Trello.
I don't know if this is just when Alan's drunk and speaking in, like, Catalan.
Catalonian. Yeah, well.
And then loses his English. I don't know. Because their votings were quite similar.
Really? Shocking. Yeah, there you go. Well, thank you again, Al, for keeping us up to date on everything that's going on in Catalonia and your thoughts on the season.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, Catalan's attack wasn't great this year. But it was the best of those, like, bottom four sides of the split. Their problem this year was defence. It was awful. They conceded more regular season tries and points than any other side. They were the second worst in penalties conceded, and they were the worst in team tackle success rates. An average of 91% tackle success over the entire regular season is fucking awful. They also gave up the highest average gain to the opposition, on top of allowing the most breaks and the most successful offloads. They were just inept defensively.
Yeah.
They can normally hang the hat on their home form, but only Widnes in the regular season had a worse record at home than them, and they only had a better record over Widnes by virtue of Reece Hamry missing that conversion late on in that 14-all draw that they had with them back in round 3. Only Widnes scored fewer home tries, and no one conceded more tries at home, so horrible, miserable viewing for the Catalan faithful. Another thing that will have made watching the Dragons tough this year was that as much as they were bad, they tended to get even worse as games went along. Tom, they had the worst difference between the first half and second half for and against of any other side. Basically, they had a minus 102 point difference between their points difference in the first half and their points difference in the second half of matches. Widnes and Leigh conceded more first half points than they did, but they conceded more than 80 second half points more than any other side in the Super League during the regular season. It's pretty dire watching.
Yeah.
In terms of individuals, Luke Walsh and Richie Myler, I think we've already picked up on Myler, they did some good stuff. They were in the top 10 for try assists and attacking kicks in the regular season. Myler was 4th in combined tries and assists in the regular season. Walsh had an assist per game on average. He was tied 3rd in assists. He was one of the top 4 goal kickers, however you looked at it, in terms of total goals kicked in the regular season, goal success rate in the regular season, that sort of thing. In terms of regulars, in the 2 half-back positions, there was only really Williams as a standoff and Gale as a scrum-off that contributed more in attack than Walsh and Myler did to their side. So you would expect, actually, things wouldn't have been too shoddy for Catalan. But then when you look at those two in defence, they were amongst the worst in missed tackles. Walsh ranked 1 of all half-backs. Myler ranked 2 of all half-backs. And only Albert Kelly, after 23 rounds, had a higher negative play count than the Catalan pair. So at that point of the season, they were just... They were costing the side as much as they were benefiting the side, which was unfortunate.
There you go. I find it hard to add anything positive to your review and Alan's review of the season. I think the thing I would say is that you started talking about defence being the main problem at Catalan. I think I would link it to attitude being one of the... almost a cancer at that club throughout the year. Under Fraser, it was apparent that the players just simply weren't trying hard enough, and you can evidence that with the statistics and the fact that their 2 best players and the 2 guys that were contributing most were the halves, but they were making so many errors and they weren't coming out on top in attack, which tells me that defensively the attitude was not right, and we saw that in your stats as well. And I think that's indicative of a broader cultural problem that was allowed to fester at the club. The Butcher took action 2/3 of the way through the season by giving Fraser the chop and bringing in Steve McNamara. I think a change of personnel in management was probably needed at that point. I think the appointment could not have been less appropriate. I think Steve McNamara is a tremendous coach and can get people to play rugby league football very, very well. What he isn't, in my opinion, is a leader of men, and what that club needed was someone to come in and put rockets up arses, and patently that did not happen under Steve McNamara. There was an uptick in style and performance, but it wasn't sufficient enough to carry them anywhere more than where they ended up, which was just into the £1 million game. and not getting away with it because they performed and beat Leigh, but I think against a different team on a different day, Catalan might have come unstuck. If they've been playing Widnes, for argument's sake, in that £1 million game, I worry for Catalan Dragons. Credit to Steve McNamara for keeping them in Super League. I imagine that was his remit at the time he took the job,
and he just about pulled it off.
And that's the title of Steve McNamara's autobiography for me, is just about pulled it off. I think in the close season, recruitment is going to be absolutely key. I like the idea that Al posited of bringing through more Catalonian and more local players. I wouldn't say just Catalanians, but and the talk of how strong the under-23s and the under-19s is very, very positive.
Yeah, they were basically sort of the third/fourth best under-19s team this year. Yeah. So that was good.
So my thing would be write this season off as a Catalan fan and hope that your leaders in terms of the board and your management team do the right things in terms of recruitment and make the right choices. Well, there you go. Maybe there's bigger fish to fry in Catalonia at the minute, but this is one to forget for me this year.
Quick with this team, I just think a quick look forward to next year with what you were saying. Do you think with the time they allow to work with the players, some of these younger players, some of these other players that need things gelling, McNamara might actually do some good over the medium term?
Look, he's going to have a
short term look.
He will have a positive impact on individual players in terms of their development. What I don't think he does is have a positive impact in terms of team unity and getting them kind of pulling in all in the same direction. So he can help individuals develop, absolutely. I think what they need at Catalan is someone who's going to bring in and impose a culture. I think when Trent Robinson was in there, and that was probably their best period in Super League, Trent Robinson imposed a culture on the club that all the foreign players are going to speak French, we're going to live and work together and really kind of pull together as a Catalan side. And then when he moved on, he continued to have success in the NRL based on the culture he brought to the Sydney Roosters, and that started to crumble at Catalan Dragons, and I don't think there's a coincidence there. So I think that's really what is key to Catalan Dragons' success next year, if they're going to have any.
Okay.
Huddersfield Giants, Mark.
Yeah, so one thing I got right here, I predicted that they'd finish 8th, and they finished 8th. You predicted they'd be in the qualifiers and finish 2nd in that competition with relative comfortability.
Prove me wrong.
I didn't get them right in the cup, though. I thought they might have had a run to the semi-finals. You got them right, saying they'd go out in the first game, and they were dumped out in round 5 by the Swinton Lions.
Yeah, and at that point the season was falling apart, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And well, we've got Paul Michael Craig to talk about what he felt about that spell of the season and maybe some of the players he feels didn't pull their weight.
Yes.
All right, now then, lads, it's Paul Michael Craig here, otherwise known as Paul Mac78 on Twitter. Just like to say thank you for all the hard work you've done putting the pod together this year. Really appreciate it. I've never missed one episode this year. So, but on to my review for the Huddersfield Giants in 2017. Going into the season, I didn't have very high expectations. I basically predicted exactly where they were going to finish. I thought they'd just make the top 8, and they did, which secures Super League for another season. But there's a few things which, had gone our way, we could have been a lot higher up on the ladder. We had 3 draws during the season, and there was probably 4 or 5 games we lost, by a converted try or less. And then there were obviously some really bad losses as well. Getting done 48-8 by Hull stands out, and I think the worst one was probably getting nilled by Leigh. Those 2 results actually took place in consecutive weeks, so that was obviously a low light of the season. Highlights, though, probably the best win of the season probably came against St Helens. That and the draw straight the very next week against Wigan probably confirmed our spot in the Super 8s and Super League for the next season. So they're probably the highlights of the season, in which was a very, very hard to watch season. We didn't really get anywhere. We kind of felt like we were treading water. Players of the season, that for me, there was only one, and that was Seb Ikahihifo. Great all season. Thoroughly deserved his spot in the Dream Team. Other players that stood out.